Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. My name's Stephanie and today I'm super excited to be showing you Holo Taco's new Birthstone Collection. This is Holo Taco's biggest release yet with a whopping 12 polishes, obviously one for each month, in an assortment of finishes from shimmers to linear holos, crushed holos and multi-chromes, flakies, and obviously a combination of all of those finishes as well. So super sparkly lineup, and this video is massive because I have so many comparisons for you guys. As always, timestamps will be in the description box and I'll save my thoughts for the end. For now, let's just get into the swatches. First up, we have Gosh Garnet, which is for January's birthstone, Garnet. This one is described as a deep garnet burgundy shimmering metallic with a subtle red to bronze shifting shimmer. As you saw, this one had incredible coverage on the first coat alone. It was super pigmented, but not as opaque as a true metallic. I know it's hard to tell here on camera, but in real life, I could see some light spots or patchiness, mainly near the edges of my nail, so I still would recommend doing 2 coats. And because this one is so dark, I imagine most people would only need 2 coats, but that could depend on your nail length and your application. This one is super beautiful. I just love deep shimmery burgundies like this, and the subtle shift in shimmer is really nice too. I feel like this definitely works as a fall shade. Next for February, we have Crystal Mommy, which is an amethyst crushed holo with scattered holo and pink micro shimmer. While I hate the name of this one, it definitely is super gorgeous. I'm just a big fan of their crushed holos, and I feel like this one is especially sparkly. I don't know if it's the addition of the scattered holo in here or what, but it is just so stunning. This one had a really great formula too, similar to their other crushed holos. It's a little bit on the sheer side on the first coat, but pretty even coverage. And I found this one to be opaque enough for me on 2 coats, but again, because this one might be a jellyish leaning base, you might need a 3rd coat. The formula on this is pretty reminiscent to the crushed holos we saw in the Rock Candy collection, but I still would say that this one really stood out a lot more. Again, I don't know if there's just more holo in here or what, but it is super beautiful, and I love that the shimmer also kind of shifts to this orangey color in more extreme lighting. Then for March, we have Happily Ever Aqua, which is a pale aquamarine linear holo with a cyan shimmer. So think of this as the blue version of toe beans. This is another absolutely breathtaking shade. Aquamarine already is one of my favorite birthstones for how icy blue and magical it looks, and this one is just so pretty. The formula on this one was lovely. I just ended up not grabbing enough polish at first, so you kind of saw it was a little bit thin on the left side of my nail, but then once I dipped back into the bottle, I had a little too much, so any unevenness that you might see is just my own fault. The formula wasn't like thick or anything like that. It was definitely very easy, smooth to work with, and self-leveled really nicely, and I found this one opaque enough for me on 2 coats, but because it's so light, I could see some people needing 3. And I did also notice that the cyan shimmer shifted to this subtle pink shade. It was really hard to capture though. Next for April, we have Ride or Diamond, which is described as a silver diamond extra holographic multi-pigment glitter with scattered holo, linear holo, holo flakes, and reflective glitter. Such a mouthful, but yeah, this is easily the most blingy polish of this lineup, and formula-wise, it was actually really smooth and easy to apply, which was really nice considering just how much pigment is in here. I kind of expected it to be a little thick and maybe not gunky, but you know, just kind of the similar texture when working with very dense glitters, but I guess I could see this one needing thinner in the future. This one was super densely packed, so I got it fully opaque for me on 2 coats. I think it's a little too dense to use as a topper, but you know, you do you. I generally loved how sparkly and rainbowy this one was, but because of that, I feel like it was a little hard to pick up on the reflective glitter, which might be good news for those of you who hate reflective glitter. Then for May, we have Emerald City, which is a cool emerald green iridescent flaky polish with a deep green jelly base and scattered holo. It's so interesting to not see any mention of teal in the description because this one definitely leans that way, a tiny bit at least in the flakies. So it's not a true emerald green, but honestly, it's still really, really gorgeous. This one also had another super pigmented formula, and if anything, I found this one to be a little bit on the thicker side, where it didn't feel the smoothest to apply like the other shades, but at the same time, it didn't look lumpy either. I found this one to be opaque on me in 2 coats, and because the base is so dark, I imagine that even though it's a little jelly leaning, if you have longer nails, you probably won't need a 3rd coat just because it's so packed with those flakies. And lastly, here it is with some adjusted lighting so you can see that shift to teal. It is really pretty. Next for June, we have The Price is Alexandrite, which is an Alexandrite-inspired teal to purple multichrome with purple metallic foil flakes and scattered holo. For those who don't know, Alexandrite is the secondary birthstone for June, and I actually do appreciate them going with this over pearl since pearl polishes don't usually look the best. This being a multichrome just has so much more dimension, and it's pretty color accurate to the birthstone, which I really appreciate. I think I would say that this one is in a black base though, as you can see towards the edges of my nail, but the shimmer is just so strong that you're always going to see some type of color. I'm not super crazy about the extra purple flakies, but I guess it was needed, otherwise this would just be a multichrome. This one is super shifty, which I think is just so cool, and if anything, the holo is definitely the more subtle element in this polish. Then for July, we have Ruby Madly Deeply, which is a bright ruby red jelly base with holo glitters. I know we've seen sparkly reds before, but I loved this one. It's just so bright and beautiful, and it had a super smooth and pigmented formula too, which you can see here just on the 1st coat alone. I think this is going to be a really great shade for the holiday season, though I will say I feel like it's one of those reds that ever so slightly leans orange, but I definitely think it could still work. You'll see, especially once I do some comparisons later on. This one was a solid 2-coater for me, and again, because it has a jelly base, you might need a 3rd coat, but I really think you won't just because there's so much glitter in here. Up next for August, we have Peridon't Bother Me, which is described as a peridot lime green shimmer with a yellow to green shift and green reflective glitters. This is one of my favorites from this lineup. I just love vibrant greens like this. This one had another lovely, even coverage formula that was a little bit sheer on the 1st coat, but opaque for me in 2 coats. Though again, I could see some people needing 3 just because this one is kind of on the lighter side. The shimmer in this is so gorgeous. I feel like in extreme lighting, I could even see a slight shift to teal, but I couldn't pick that up on camera. You will see though, it goes from this bright yellow to a more true kind of Kelly green. So it's still really pretty, perfect for green lovers. The one downside though, similar to Rider Diamond, I just had a really hard time seeing the green reflective glitters, probably because they just blended in with the base. Next for September, we have Playing with Sapphire, a deep sapphire blue iridescent flaky in a dark blue jelly base with scattered holographic glitter. The base in this one is super dark to the point that I would say it's almost like a blackened blue, but not a true black, but definitely very close. The shimmer in this is super vibrant though, so I feel like you can really tell it's a deep sapphire blue color, which I absolutely adore. Since this one is so dark, I got it opaque in 2 coats, but because it's a little on the jelly side, I could see you needing a 3rd if you have longer nails or just prefer doing thinner coats. I actually did notice some patchiness when I did my skittle, but that was mainly in direct sunlight, which you'll see soon enough. Up next for October is Birthday Brat, which is described as a bright pink topaz frosted metal with silver and rose gold metallic flakes, iridescent flakes, and scattered hollow. So I'm not sure why it's listed as topaz since the birthstone is pink tourmaline, which I know a lot of people are already so upset over that they went with pink tourmaline instead of opal, but as a certified pink lover, also born on October 17th, I absolutely loved this one. It's the only frosted metal in this lineup, and I'm really excited because it seems like it's the original frosted metal formula compared to the newer one seen in Silent Library, where it has the larger foily metallic pieces that have this mirror-like shine. The formula on this was fantastic, where I only needed 2 coats. Then for November, we have Topaz Tears, a dark antique topaz flake polish with a cool brown jelly base, green gold iridescent flakies, bronze shimmer, and gold scattered hollow. This is definitely one of the most unique polishes in this lineup. I was honestly really surprised to see this from Holo Taco, and I'm just so curious to hear your thoughts on this one, because sadly, I imagine this won't appeal to a lot of people, even though it feels like fall in a bottle. It does have a great formula though, similar to the others, where it's a solid 2-coater for me, and while it's packed with shimmer and flakies, it's still super smooth to apply. This one also didn't mention it in the description, but I did notice that the flakies actually shift to a teal color in extreme lighting, which I thought was really cool and maybe what helped inspire the name. And last but certainly not least, we have Tanzanite Away, a Tanzanite-inspired shimmer with an indigo jelly base, red magenta micro shimmer, scattered hollow, and blue reflective glitter. I really like this one, which might not be a surprise if you know me and my taste. These red shimmers in purpley bases are just so stunning to me. And this one was super pigmented too, definitely the closest to being a 1-coater out of the 12, but I still would recommend doing 2 coats, and I can't imagine anybody really needing a 3rd for this shade. Unfortunately though, because this one was so pigmented, I feel like that kind of made the shimmer a little bit on the subtle side. It's not super glowy by any means, but I feel like you can definitely still see it. It has this really pretty shift to this kind of coppery amber color in indirect light, and I just love how the hollow flakies stand against the base. And thankfully, the blue reflective glitter in this one did really stand out, maybe because there's more contrast against the base color. Obviously, reflective glitter is going to look the best under flash, but I feel like this was a little on the subtle side in real life. And finally, we are getting to my Skittles. Here is the first half of the collection, so from January through June. I have both Amethyst and Alexandrite on my thumb because I thought they were the most similar, being the purple kind of shades, but obviously they're not dupes by any means. I would say coverage-wise, these all look incredible on 2 coats, and they really shine in direct sunlight. Obviously, it just shows off all of the sparkle. In bright indirect light is where you're going to lose some of the shimmer, mainly in Garnet. I feel like that one ends up looking the most flat, unfortunately, but the others definitely still look really nice. I feel like here is where you start to see even more of that multi-chrome glow in Alexandrite, and obviously you lose all of the hollow in Happily Ever Aqua, but it still has this almost chromey kind of look to it, probably because of that cyan shimmer. I feel like it just makes it stand out so much more compared to the shimmer in Garnet, because I feel like here you just can't see it at all. It just kind of looks like black basically. But the one that's going to shine the most in lower lighting is the Price's Alexandrite, because that's where you really see that multi-chrome glow. It just looks really cool. And lastly, here's a little clip under flash, even though the only one that really needs it is Rider Diamond having the reflective glitter. But it was nice to see that burgundy shimmer show up again in Garnet. I think it is just so beautiful as long as it has some kind of light source on it. And then here is the second half of the collection, also worn in 2 coats under the same lighting conditions. And here's what I mean, where the Sapphire shade ended up being a little bit patchy on my middle finger, so you might need a 3rd coat again for that shade. And here on my thumb, I have both the Ruby and Pink Tourmaline shade, since obviously I thought those 2 were the closest, and they kind of are. I mean, obviously not that they're dupes, but I feel like in certain angles, it's kind of hard to tell them apart. Other than that though, I thought these these shades just looked so great. Like, they were pretty full coverage, again, with the exception of Sapphire. They were very sparkly and shimmery and kind of had holo, but not as much holo as the first half of the collection. And I thought these also looked really good under low lighting too. Like, the multi-chrome kind of shined a lot in the Peridon't shade and the Flakies in the Topaz shade for November. So yeah, overall, these just looked super, super stunning. And again, having flash on just makes them shine so much. I just really loved how sparkly this collection was. I do still wish that the shimmer and the blue reflective glitter just picked up a little bit better in Tanzanite away. Like, it's still really sparkly and you can tell that it's there, but it's just a bit on the subtle side, which I guess could be a win for people who don't love reflective glitter. Now, getting into comparisons, we're starting with Garnet, and I wanted to show this next to Inkwell from the recent Dark Academia collection. I feel like they both had very similar vibes, being these super dark bases with different colored shimmers. So I thought maybe Orbite Me would be a little bit closer color-wise to the shimmer that you see in Garnet. Obviously, that one's a crushed holo, so it's gonna look different. Visually, Garnet and Inkwell definitely have that same kind of finish, but I think Orbite Me is closer in color. So in a way, Garnet is kind of an in-between of these two. And since that one does have a shimmer that shifts to that bronzy color, in certain angles it does look similar to Inkwell, but it's only like very specific angles of lighting. So I wouldn't call these dupes by any means. I did also want to show Garnet next to Cirque's Eye of the Beholder, which is a magnetic, but I thought the multi-chrome shimmer was a lot more similar. Like, you can probably see in the bottle that they both look the same and they shift to almost the same kind of color in indirect light, but you can definitely tell a difference on the nail. I think Cirque's generally is just a lot more shifty, maybe because the base is more jelly. Next, for Crystal Mommy, I wanted to show it next to a couple of recent purples. The first one being Guilty Pleasure, which was a thermal, but I feel like the tone kind of is similar. Guilty Pleasure actually does have a pink shimmer, but it is super, super subtle compared to this one. And obviously, I have to show this next to Electric Sweetener, which was from the Rock Candy collection that featured that combination of crushed holo and shimmer formula. They definitely look a lot more similar in the bottle than they do on the nail. You can see that Crystal Mommy is just a bit deeper. Obviously, it has a pink shimmer while Electric Sweetener is blue, but the holo definitely pops more in Crystal Mommy. I did also want to show this next to Queen's Curse, which was one of the magnetics that was retired. I know that one is a lot darker, but I feel like the magnetic shimmer definitely looks pretty similar, at least when it has that purple to pink sort of shift. So here is 2 coats of that unmagnetized, and while that one also has a little bit of a holo sparkle, it's definitely more fine and dainty compared to the crushed holo finish. So I decided to do a layer of a flaky holo topper, and that definitely matches the visual kind of look of Crystal Mommy more, but again, it's just a little too dark to be a dupe. Next, for Happily Ever Aqua, I wanted to quickly show this next to Nailpollies I See What You Did There, because I thought it was gonna be a similar icy kind of blue, but obviously Nailpollies is a lot lighter, a lot more white based, and not holo. So I think the closest that I had to a dupe for this was ILNP's Aria. It's just another pale but super vibrant light blue linear holo, and the only thing that's kind of keeping it from being a dead-on dupe is that it doesn't have that cyan shimmer, which I know isn't super easy to tell. I think it's easier to pick up in the bottle. On the nail, I do think it is pretty hard to tell these apart. There is a subtle difference though, where Happily Ever Aqua is a little bit lighter. I thought you'd be able to see the difference a little bit easier under low light, away from all the rainbow flare, but it's still kind of hard to tell. Next, for Rider Diamond, I of course have to show this next to Rainbow Snow, which was one of the OG holiday glitters, but that one obviously is in a multi-glitter kind of formula, so it's a little bit different visually. I think the closest that I have to a dupe to Rider Diamond is ILNP's The Lighthouse, which has this linear holo, scattered holo, holo flakies, even regular silver metallic flakies that aren't holo. The only thing it's really missing is the silver reflective glitter, but other than that, these pretty much have the same kind of elements in them, and visually I feel like they look the same too. I'm showing all three of these here in one coat so you can kind of see the difference in coverage and their little glitters and flakies and whatnot. On two coats, I feel like these all definitely blend in together. Like Rainbow Snow could kind of pass, but definitely the Lighthouse I would consider to be close enough to a dupe. If anything, it's a little bit more sheer. Then for Emerald City, I wanted to quickly show this next to Never Tied Down, since I saw a lot of people saying that it leaned very teal, but it's not a true teal by any means. It definitely is very green, so I figured I could also show this next to Ivy League from the Dark Academia collection, but that one's an even darker, like blackened green base with a little bit more of a yellowy green kind of shimmer, so also not dupes. And here it is next to Starry-Eyed, which I would kind of consider like a tealy green sort of color, but that one's a little bit deeper and maybe more muted in a way, not to mention it's also a different formula. I definitely think the closest to being a dupe is Mooncat's Maelstrom from the Songs of Sirens collection earlier this year. They basically have a very similar flaky balm jelly kind of formula, but they're not exact dupes either. Mooncat's is definitely more on the blue side, at least as far as the base goes. I think these both have the same color shifting flakies that go from green to teal, but I do think the flakies are a bit larger in Mooncat and a little bit more sparse. Like, even though they're both packed with flakies, I feel like you just get a little bit more of that jelly base in Mooncat. Next, for The Price is Alexandrite, I wanted to show this next to Mooncat's A Most Destructive Melody, which was also from the Songs of Sirens collection. It's the closest that I have to that greenish blue to purple shifting multi-chrome, but the color that you see head on is the most different, where it's a little bit more blue in Mooncat versus this like teal color in Holo Taco. I do think that pinky purple fuchsia color they both shift to is pretty similar though, like almost the same. So the only other main difference is that Holo Taco has those purple flakies, but they're pretty small. Then for Ruby Madly Deeply, I wanted to quickly show this next to Jam Session, which was the red crushed hollow from the Rock Candy collection, but as you can see, that one's even more of an orangey red color. So for closer reds, I wanted to show this next to Favorite Sister, which was the red frosted metal from a couple of years ago, but that one is a little bit more vibrant, like a cherry red or something, not to mention it's like a totally different finish. A closer finish is definitely the Holiday Glitters, so of course I have to show this next to Naughty List, which is the red in that glitter formula, and that one I would definitely consider more of a true like holiday red. It's a little bit darker, a little bit less orangey, so color wise it's not as close as Favorite Sister is to Ruby, but obviously finish wise Naughty List is going to be closer. The glitters are just a little bit larger. Up next for Peridon't Bother Me, I wanted to quickly show this next to Sour Note, which was the green from the Rock Candy collection. I thought these were going to be a lot more similar, but they are very, very different. Definitely not dupes. I definitely think something like Full Charge, which was the retired lime green linear hollow, is a lot more similar. Not exactly a dupe though. I feel like you can tell in the bottle Peridon't Bother Me is a little bit deeper. So I did also want to show this next to Green Taffy for good measure, which was just the deeper like Kelly green linear hollow, but that one's kind of like a slightly different shade of green. It's not as yellowy as Peridon't Bother Me or Full Charge. So I would definitely say Peridon't Bother Me is closer to Full Charge, especially because of that yellowy shimmer in there. Still not a dupe though, because it's not even a linear hollow. Up next for Playing with Sapphire, I was immediately reminded of ILNP's Nocturnal, which was from a Halloween collection a couple of years ago. I thought they looked pretty similar in the bottle. The shimmer is a little bit darker in Nocturnal, so I thought something closer would be Mooncat's Midnight Rider, which has a bit more of a vibrant blue, like cobalt kind of shimmer, and it's also packed with this like dainty hollow sparkle. So they definitely all have a pretty similar finish to them, but color-wise they are slightly off. ILNP has a true black base, which I feel like you can see here it's a bit darker, but Mooncat's is a little bit more indigo, which you can kind of see near my cuticle, but that one's still really similar. Then for Birthday Brat, I wanted to quickly show this next to Deeply Superficial, which was the hot pink, jelly, flaky thermal. Obviously very different finishes, but just for color reference. And here it is next to Favorite Sister, which was the red frosted metal, which I feel like you can definitely tell these apart, but in certain angles, Birthday Brat definitely looks a little deeper, but I wouldn't call them dupes by any means. I think if anything, Birthday Brat is a little bit closer to something like Hot Wire Pink, being like a dark, hot pink, almost magenta leaning color, but obviously these are not dupes because they're totally different finishes. I thought it would kind of be close to Private Villa from the Vacation collection, but that one's even more of like a red leaning pink shade, and it's filled with like a golden shimmer, so definitely not dupes. So while I don't have Party Punch, I do have Mooncat's My Sandy Claus outfit, which I think is pretty similar color-wise at least. So I thought these would be kind of close, but it's sort of missing that like flaky effect. So I thought I could layer Mooncat's Space Oddity over my Sandy Claus outfit to kind of mimic that like foil metallic look over that hot pink kind of red leaning base. And it sort of has a similar vibe, but you definitely see more of those flashes of purple from Space Oddity. Then for Topaz tiers, I really don't have anything quite like it. I thought the closest in my collection was Mooncat's Stumped, which is this jelly flaky formula. And while it does have these like golden flakies that sort of match the golden shimmer in Topaz tiers, they just look so different on the nail. Stumped is definitely more of a warmer brown base with larger flakies in it. And finally, for Tanzanite Away, I was immediately reminded of a couple of shades. The first one is ILNP's Hallucinate, which has a similar bluey purple kind of base with this vibrant red shimmer, but there's no holo in that one, so an even closer finish I think is Cirque's Coronation. That one has the holo, the red shimmer, the purpley kind of base, but the base in that one I think is a lot more red leaning. I actually think the base color in Hallucinate is a little bit more similar to Tanzanite Away, but that one's a bit more sheer, so it looks lighter here. But again, the shimmer is definitely a lot more noticeable and glowy and shifty in Hallucinate than it is in Tanzanite Away, which I think you can see a lot more clearly here in like extreme lighting. But if you layered that over a darker base, added holo, it would be pretty close. The only thing it's missing is the blue reflective glitter, and I actually have a polish that has that on top of the purple base and the red shimmer. I actually think the only thing that's missing from this one is the holo, unless it's just super dainty and I can't see it. But this is SWATCHES Fantastic Jellyfish, which was a previous polish pickup shade from I want to say 2 years ago. So if you were looking for that shade, I think this Holo Taco one is a really great alternative. It's not an exact dupe because SWATCHES is more of a true purple with more of a jelly kind of base formula compared to how pigmented Tanzanite Away is. So the red shimmer pops a little bit more in SWATCHES, but they are pretty similar otherwise. So that wraps up my swatches and comparisons for Holo Taco's Birthstone Collection. As a reminder, this is a limited edition release, so I will have Holo Taco's website linked down below if you're planning to pick any of these up, though I'm sure so many of you already grabbed them, so I would love to know if you picked up your birthstone or just how you feel about each of the shades, because generally I really do love these. They are just so sparkly. Obviously, I'm a sucker for the birthstone theme. If you're familiar with my birth month series, you know that I love featuring a number of polishes inspired by the month's birthstones. So it was really cool to see this lineup because I just love seeing brands' interpretations of these things. And I especially loved seeing some of the secondary birthstones because a lot of people don't even realize that they like are a thing. But from what I've seen, there's kind of been like a mixed reaction to these secondary birthstones. I think mainly for pink tourmaline, a lot of people were upset that they didn't go with opal. And I think I've seen a couple of people upset about Alexandrite being chosen over pearl, but honestly, when it comes to nail polishes, I definitely would prefer like a multi-chrome with Alexandrite over a more traditional pearly finish polish. So I'm super curious to know what your thoughts are on your birthstone and if you're going to be grabbing it, and just what other shades you did pick up from this launch, because I feel like just generally they are so gorgeous. Makes me super curious to see what the best sellers are going to be, because those are the ones that are gonna come back at some point. And I don't even know if I can make predictions. I feel like the safest bets are probably Happily Ever Aqua and Ride or Diamond. Maybe Ruby and Sapphire I could see being bestsellers too, but I'm really curious about like the other shades, especially the Topaz for November, because I hate to say it, but that is my least favorite from the lineup. But I definitely do think it is very unique, especially to Holo Taco's lineup. So I do appreciate them like really going for it with that shade. But yeah, let me know if you have any predictions. So I hope you liked this video. Please leave me a like if you did, and leave me any and all thoughts that you have down below so we can chat about it. But thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.